just a little while longer. Fight on, just a little while longer. Every little thing will be all right. Every little thing will be all right.
It's a show like no other. The 30th annual Diva Simply Singing Concert and Telethon, presented by Sheryl Ralph and the Diva Foundation. A star-studded event raising awareness for HIV/AIDS. Performances by Jennifer Lewis, Layla Hathaway, Anthony Hamilton, and more. Benefiting Project Angel Food and Better Brothers LA. Diva Simply Singing, powered by Gilead. Saturday at 7 on KTLA 5, LA's very own.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the World AIDS Day Town Hall brought to you by AARP. I am your diva, divinely inspired, victoriously AIDS aware, alive, Sheryl Lee Ralph. In this week coming up, we've got so much to share with you, but this very first town hall, this World AIDS Day town hall, has been graciously brought to all of us by AARP. Honey, let me tell you, AARP, it's not for old people, it's for young at heart people. Thank you, AARP.
Right now, AARP's work is more important than ever. We hear older Americans loud and clear, and that's why we fight for what they and their families need. Access to health care, affordable prescription drugs, opportunities to save for the future, ending age discrimination, a healthy, financially secure, fulfilling life. That's what AARP fights for, because that's what everyone deserves. Join us in fighting for what's right.
Thank you, AARP CEO Joanne Jenkins. Now, this next diva, divinely inspired, victoriously alive, has been making hits in every decade of her life. And now, just having had her 75th birthday, she's still cranking out the hits. Please welcome diva Melba Moore.
Along the way, and it's been a long, rough road. But I never lost my voice, I never lost my health, I never lost my praise, and I am still doing me. That's George Pettis on the piano.
I hope that got all of you going. Now, to carry on this conversation with our wonderful panelists, like I keep telling you, trusted advocates, trusted voices, trusted people of this experience. Please welcome from AARP, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. Welcome to this conversation. And I cannot thank you enough for bringing the generosity of your spirit and bringing AARP into this discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sheryl, and thank you to the D.I.V.A Foundation for being an incredible partner. This is an important time of year for so many of us, and it is an important conversation. It illuminates some of the persistent challenges that we see in our communities. And so, AARP is here to be, a wise friend and fierce defender.
And I so appreciate that. So many people want to forget that World AIDS Day was created to bring us together in the fight against AIDS. And over the years, it seems that people have forgotten that there is still a fight to be had, that people are still becoming infected, that yes, HIV is manageable, but still people die of AIDS complications.
That's right. And those complications are made more complicated based on our identity. For folks of color, particularly Black folks, for LGBTQ folks, the challenges related to HIV/AIDS are exacerbated by issues related to financial security and issues related to non-discrimination protections. You might remember that earlier this year, Sheryl, there was a big fight around finalized Rule 1557 of the Affordable Care Act, which provides non-discrimination protections to LGBTQ folks and non-English speakers. AARP filed a public comment opposing that. And we have been doing our darndest to fight to make sure that as folks age, that they're able to age with dignity. And aging with dignity means that you don't have to worry about whether or not you'd be discriminated against in healthcare or any other part of your life.
Absolutely. Now, you've helped me gather a wonderful panel to start having this conversation. And I just want to say one thing. When I did the opening, I said AARP isn't for old people, it's for young at heart people. And I think that enough respect has not been given to those people who are alive and living, to the people who have, under many difficulties, just survived, who just continue to thrive and be. And in doing so, they have gained wisdom. And wisdom is very important. Having the experiences of life that you are able to share with those who are younger than you, they are very important. And I thank you for gathering some of those people here with us today. So would you please introduce our panelists?
Absolutely. I want to start off with somebody who I have long admired, who is a hero to so many of us, Mr. Phill Wilson, who is founder of the Black AIDS Institute. He's also winning HIV/AIDS activist, writer, and speaker. Welcome, Mr. Wilson.
Well, thank you. I am so happy to be here. At this point in my life, I say I'm happy to be anywhere. So we count our blessings every day.
Absolutely. I've known Nii-Quartelai, I've known Phill a very long time. I would say, Phill, I've known you about 35 years.
Exactly. I was not gonna say that. I was gonna wait to see if you say that, because I wasn't going to be wasn't going to be towed off for disclosing any information you didn't want to put out there. But yes, it has been that long.
And I'm investing for people. I love the fact that I'm growing wiser with age. My wisdom quotient is filling up. So I completely accept aging in my life and aging well. But like I said to you at your 60th birthday party, I'm just happy it happened to you first.
Yes. Absolutely. We count our blessings. And we have to. To do otherwise would be disrespectful for all of our friends and loved ones that didn't get the opportunity to reach this point in their lives. And so I think about them every day, you know.
Absolutely.
And I'm just so glad, as somebody who represents sort of another generation of folks that are willing and able to take up the fight, that so many of us get to benefit from your wisdom. And so thanks in advance for all the wisdom that you're bringing to this conversation.
Thank you.
Next up, I want to introduce Rae Lewis-Thornton, Emmy Award-winning AIDS activist, author, award-winning blogger, social media expert, jewelry designer, and yes, tea connoisseur. Rae has been living with HIV for 37 years and AIDS for 28 years. She lectures worldwide on the topic of living with HIV/AIDS, challenging stereotypes and myths surrounding the disease. Welcome, Rae Lewis-Thornton.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
That's another person I've known forever.
Yes, you have known me forever.
Yes, I have. I'm telling you, Nii-Quartelai, I will never, ever forget the way Rae's whole being just changed my life when I saw her on the cover of Essence magazine. And at that time, I thought, all the conversations that Phill and I had around HIV and AIDS, I thought I knew something about the disease. And here came Rae on the cover of Essence, and it was like, whoa, this is a whole nother chapter. I thought it could happen, but here she was, and she was the proof. So we've been friends since that time, and that's been a long time too.
That's been a long time too, absolutely. And for me, it is an honor to have been that Black woman to show other Black women that you could too get HIV. And I just want to say, the cover of the magazine said, "Facing AIDS. I'm young, I'm educated, I'm drug-free, and I'm dying of AIDS." Wow, God had a plan that we could not see that was greater than this disease. Yep.
Incredible. Right. Incredible. I want to add to this dynamic lineup, Hadia Broadbent. Hadia is a distinguished international motivational speaker and HIV/AIDS activist with a mission to educate people of all ages living with AIDS from the age of 3. She has an innate ability to bond with any audience. You all will very quickly see this. And when addressing the public about the issues of HIV/AIDS, her primary goal is to provide a clear understanding of how to avoid at-risk behaviors through self-examination and informed decision-making. Please welcome Hadia Broadbent.
Hello. Hi.
Hadia, this is another person I've known for quite some time. So let me tell you something. And for those who will be watching this, I will never forget seeing Hydeia on TV, and she was sitting with adults. And here she was, literally a little baby. And this little child was able to speak their truth to the world in a way that the adults around her could not, would not do. So I was like, I got to meet this baby. So I've known this person a long time as well. I'm very happy to have her with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, I want to invite Bert Champagne to join us. Bert is one of the top fundraising, logistical, event production experts out there. He is the event director for AIDS Walk New York, which is the largest AIDS fundraiser in the world, AIDS Walk Los Angeles, and AIDS Walk San Francisco, not too far from where I grew up. He's known throughout Los Angeles as a dedicated and beloved volunteer of numerous organizations and events, including APLA's stage events, Divas Simply Singing, the Los Angeles Marathon, Project Angel Food, the Diamonds of the South Bay chapter of the American Women's Business Association, and Los Angeles Gay Pride Parade. Please welcome Bert Champagne.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I've known most of you, and there's some new people that I'm meeting today, so thank you.
Okay, Nii-Quartelai, you know I have a story, right?
Please.
Thank you. So let me just say this. When you have these ideas and you have these plans and you have this life you think you're going to live, and then you meet people and you never know why certain people are brought into your circle. You never know. But when I first met Bert, and he was one of the very first people to come to volunteer with Divas, Bert was quiet. Bert never said anything. If you asked him to do something, he would give you that gentle nod saying that he could hear you and he understood what you said. But sometimes I was like, my God, can he speak? I mean, he never speaks. And he has been together with us over all of these years, and he has found his voice. He has gone from strength to strength. So when I see him now moving in all of these circles, doing all of these tremendous things in the world, all I can say is, damn, I'm good. Yeah.
See.
And thank you, God.
The teacher.
Thank you,
the
Bert.
the teacher that gives us our voice. Thank you,
wow.
Sheryl.
Wow.
You used it well.
What an incredible group, what a dynamic group of movement builders, of advocates, of activists, folks that would not take no for an answer. And so with that, I really want to start with part one of our conversation, which is delving into the history and context. This is World AIDS Day, and I think it's important that folks understand the history and context, particularly from the perspective of so many history makers. And so, Sheryl, can you kick us off sharing a little bit about your journey as an ally in the early days of the HIV/AIDS epidemic? Tell us a little bit about the early days and what that was like as an ally of the LGBTQ community and as somebody who became a fierce advocate and activist on the HIV/AIDS front.
Well, you know, it's so interesting for me to think back when you ask me a question like that. You know, I tell people all the time, for me, it started as an original company member of Dreamgirls on Broadway. And with all of the amazing things done with Dreamgirls, they hardly ever mentioned the fact that we lost just about 1/3 of our original company to AIDS. There wasn't any HIV per se. There wasn't even AIDS. It was GRID. You know, they call it GRID, and if they didn't call it GRID, the gay-related, gay men's cancer, they did immune deficiency disease. If they didn't call it GRID, they were calling it the gay men's cancer. They were calling it that disease, that gay disease. And it was horrible because people were suffering. Nobody wanted to acknowledge their suffering. Nobody wanted to talk about it out loud. And people died. And people died under stigma. People died with shame. And when I would write about the fact that you would go to, the hospitals to look for your friends, and they were so disrespected as human beings. And that was so painful, because the little church girl in me is like, we can do better than this. But at that time, people did not want to do better. And America could not have been more forceful, in your face, loud about making sure gay people knew that they were hated in America. And I found it shocking. In some ways, it reminds me now about how people find it easy to be disrespectful to other humans, how people find it easy to be judgmental on other human beings. And I just knew that it was wrong. Because I always said, shoot, if anybody can help you with your wig, weft, and wardrobe problem, you can respect those people. And I just, in my mind, it just made me, I think how it got me was the fact that I was always the ugly girl. I was always the girl left out. I was always the one, I was captain of the team because I had to build my own team, because nobody picked me to be on their team. I was the little girl they made fun of. They called me names. If I was the only Black girl in the school, they called me the N-word. And when I saw it happening to my friends who happened to be gay, it was sort of like, that's it right there. Damn, wow, how that just happened. That's how I became an ally, because people were mean to me. And when I saw it happening to my friends, I didn't like it. And so those early days put me on the path to the woman that I am still becoming. It's not over. I mean, look at it. We're doing 30 years of Diva Simply Singing. And even doing this fight, the fight against HIV and AIDS and stigma, to be in the fight and to have my gender disrespected, because there were so many men in the fight, and to be a woman in the fight, people disrespected my gender. And then to be early to the fight as a Black woman, they disrespected my race. So then, you know, people also were judgmental about why. And they kept asking why. And they kept saying things like, what's wrong with her? As if I was gay, then there was something wrong with me. And that's why she cared. So here I am, a straight Black female, and none of those things curried me much favor, except for the fact that I knew I was fighting for my friends and their memory. So nothing about it has been easy, but I did feel vindicated when I saw Pose. I was like, that's what I'm talking about. There's the scene right there. There's my friends in the hospital with nobody to care about them. There it is. There they are in their houses creating their own families because their families had turned their backs on them. It was like, see, there it is right there. So, you know, I felt good seeing Pose because I felt vindicated. But Nii-Quartelai, to answer your question, there has been nothing easy about the fight back then and now. Nothing.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And so, you know, Sheryl just really painted a very vivid picture for all of us. And I want to go to Phill Wilson now, the founder of the Black AIDS Institute. You know, I remember in the 1990s, you know, seeing Phill Wilson, you know, on TV, you know, providing his expertise, sharing very courageously his lived experience. Phill, I want to bring you into the conversation to share a little bit about your journey, not just as a Black gay man, but as a community leader. On the issue of HIV/AIDS. You know, are there aspects of this current moment that we find ourselves in as a nation that are reminiscent of the early days of your journey as a community leader? HIV/AIDS?
Absolutely. You know, I feel like it's Groundhog's Day sometimes, you know, because the parallels are so strong and it is so painful sometimes to watch. In the early days of the AIDS epidemic, and I kind of became came to it accidentally. Now, I discovered that I was a gay man relatively late. I was in my early 20s. I came out in 1980. I immediately was in a long-term relationship. And one day, my partner, his name was Chris Brownlee, who would go on the Chris Brownlee Hospice in Los Angeles, was named after him. One day he came home and said he has swollen lymph nodes. And I said, well, I have swollen lymph nodes as well. And we discovered that there was this new disease associated with swollen lymph nodes. And that was all we knew at the time. And we were part of a gay softball league in Chicago. And one of our teammates, he was he played shortstop, and he didn't show up for practice one Wednesday, and 3 weeks later he was dead. And that was kind of my introduction to the epidemic. And the kind of the parallels in the early days, the first thing was ignorance, because we didn't know anything. And then that was followed by panic, which was followed by denial, which was followed by stigma. And then finally, we started to come up with solutions and remedies, and eventually the science caught up with our activism. But the thing that is most important, I think, about the early experience with HIV and AIDS is that everything that happened, whether it was political, whether it was scientific, whether it is treatment, whether it was community organizing, whether it was media, whether it was awareness, it was driven by community. Yes. And in the early days in this country, when it was perceived as a white gay men's disease, I thought, from what little I knew about infectious disease, I thought, this doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't make sense at all. And I remember, the saying in Black communities that when white people get a cold, Black people get pneumonia. And I thought, no, white people are getting pneumonia here. What's going to happen to us? And I began to kind of start a conversation in Black communities. And I remember the doors being slammed in my face. The churches were being slammed in my face, and the media was being slammed in my face. And I remember, when I first got kind of some headway in Black churches, I went to them and they were saying, this is not our problem. We're not going to let them blame this on us. Right. And I remember being in this church, and I'm the grandson and the great-grandson and the great-great-grandson of Black Baptist ministers. And so at this particular day, the ministers are going up to the pulpit and speaking, and all the lay people were speaking at a microphone on the floor. So when it became my turn to speak, I went up to the pulpit, and I basically said, you've been saying all of these things about the epidemic. So I just have one question. How many of us need to die before it becomes our problem? Yeah. Give me the number. Give me the number. And then I will come back to you when that happens, because it will happen. Right. And so the truth of the matter is they already knew that was happening because they were already doing the funerals. And so as I was leaving the church, I had a handful of brochures that I brought. And as I walked through the sanctuary, the ministers very quietly would say, they would reach their hand out for a brochure. And by the time I got to the back of the church, all of the brochures were gone. And so it's interesting now as we learn so much about HIV through HIV that is so applicable today. We learn how to build a response. We taught ourselves that lessons, That's right. And we taught ourselves the science. I knew nothing about science. I knew so little about science that as an undergrad, you had to have a science course to graduate. I found a loophole. They had a course called Science for Teachers. And so it was biology for people who had to teach biology to elementary school kids. But it counted as a science credit. But there was no real science in the course. That was the course I took to fulfill my science credentials. And lo and behold, as time passed, I founded a scientific think tank. The Black AIDS Institute was a science. We delivered science to Black community. Now I currently, I was invited to sit on boards at the NIH and NIAID, approving scientific studies and what have you. And we taught ourselves that. We taught ourselves about the science. We taught ourselves about education. We learned the principles around raising awareness and education and activism and policymaking and mobilization, all those things. And now these are all the tools that are necessary if we're going to be successful in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic.
And thank you for that context, and thank you for being so generous sharing your journey, Phill. I want to bring Rae Lewis-Thornton into the conversation. And Rae, you were the face of HIV/AIDS on the cover of Essence magazine so many years ago. That was groundbreaking, and was a part of the culture change that we are still struggling with today. Can you share a little bit about what that moment was like when you saw yourself on the cover of Essence magazine and what that meant, for Black women who have been long impacted by HIV/AIDS, but surely not the face of HIV/AIDS, and certainly not near the front of the line for resources to support.
When I appeared on the cover of Essence, 26 years ago, I had been living with HIV already for 11 years. I donated blood. I organized the blood drive because there had been an Amtrak accident in Northern Virginia, and there had been news reports about shortages of blood and how people were afraid to donate blood because they thought somehow that HIV was going to hop into this clean needle in a clean bag that was taking your blood and give you HIV. And so I knew a little bit about HIV because I was a political, I worked in politics. I was a national organizer, and I'd worked for Jesse Jackson on his presidential campaigns. He had an AIDS policy. He'd slept in AIDS hospice, bringing attention to HIV. And so I thought, this is utterly ridiculous. And I organized the blood drive at my job. I was working for a peace organization at the time. And, everybody, donated blood. They had only been testing. I was listening to Phill contextualize where we were in the early days in this disease. And Sheryl, when she talked about grit, they didn't even come up with identify HIV until like 4 years, almost 3 years after we discovered AIDS. So from the first cases of AIDS to 83, 84, they still didn't even know what caused HIV. And so anyway, we donated blood. They had only been testing all donated blood for about a year, almost 2 years, a little under 2 years. And what I thought was a thank you letter was a letter telling me that something was wrong with the blood I had donated. And back then, we didn't really know that much about HIV versus AIDS. We knew that AIDS was the death sentence, and that if you were diagnosed with AIDS rather than HIV, that you were going to die. And so, the woman at Red Cross told me, oh, you have HIV, you may never get AIDS. I walked out of the Red Cross building, and I prayed that to God, and my prayer had been, Lord, don't ever let me get AIDS. And I went really basically on with my life, but I call it a quasi denial and a quasi secret. I told, the first 10 years, I told 5-7 people, The first day I told 4 people, and then I didn't tell anybody else for another 3 years. And I just, I was in a study at NIH. I went to the study every 6 months. They told me that I needed to be on AZT, and I started AZT. And the secret was so buried that I would peel the labels off the AZT bottle and flush it down a toilet stool before I actually threw the bottle of medicine away, because I didn't want anyone to know that I was infected. Phill and Sheryl both talked about the homophobia around HIV in the earlier days, but we had gotten to the place in America where the only women with HIV were considered prostitutes, women who were promiscuous, IV drug users. And so, I guarded my reputation. I guarded my image. I was climbing this ladder as a political organizer. Some of my contemporaries were women like Donna Brazile and Melba Moore and, the Colored Girls. Those were my peers. And I didn't want anyone to know that I had this disease. And then it happened. They told me that I had transitioned to AIDS. And just to put a pin in it, it had only been months. The only reason clinically I transitioned to AIDS was because the Center for Disease Control had just changed the definition of AIDS to actually include women. So the first 6 years of this disease, we didn't even include health-related issues to AIDS that made it inclusive of women even being diagnosed with AIDS. And, the long and short of it is I started telling my friends and family my friends mostly, and my political family, that I had HIV, that I had AIDS, so that I could prepare them for my death. Reverend Jesse Jackson's my mentor, he and his wife, and I knew I needed to tell him before I started telling other people. And I remember standing in his kitchen, and I said, "Reverend, I need to talk to you about something serious." And he said, what? And he said, "You're pregnant?" I was like, "Woo, Lord, I wish that was it." And I just said it. I was like, "I have AIDS." And he said, "You mean HIV?" And I said, "No, I have AIDS." And years later, he said he was disconnected because he had seen people dying from AIDS. We had the first AIDS death at the Push family was Keith Barrell, the entertainer, who died in 1983 when I just started my work at Operation Push as an intern. And so I told him, we prayed, we told Mrs. Jackson, and on a fluke, someone called to me and asked me would I speak at a school. We didn't really see women talking about HIV AIDS. We didn't see, especially women who weren't IV drug users. And so to have started speaking locally in Chicago, God gave me an even greater platform. 6 months later, Susan Taylor asked me would I be on the cover of Essence magazine. And, women still bring me that article in mint condition. And they say to me that it changed the discussion for them. It changed their behavior, their sex life, because, everybody was looking for Mr. Right. And in the process of looking for Mr. Right, we had sex, but we didn't consider ourselves promiscuous. And so women had to rethink their whole dating and sex life, that waiting to have sex 6 months in a relationship didn't keep you free from HIV, because you cannot look at a person and tell their HIV status.
Yeah.
If I can jump in for a second, because I have an interesting addition, Rae, that I don't think you even know about that, is that I was involved with the Essence Music Festival during that time, and I was the first speaker to speak from the stage at Essence about HIV and AIDS. And what was shocking is I gave a talk, and Essence was not really doing testing or passing out condoms or anything. And I went to Susan and I said, you guys need to do something, because, this is a place where people are getting infected. I said, and I shared with her my experience. So I got up and I spoke and I shared with them that I was a gay man and that I was living with AIDS, and the auditorium was packed. And so I'm leaving, walking through the audience after I've spoken, and women were approaching me, to go out on a date. And I was like, were you not just in this room? Like, there is so much that's wrong with this thing. And I said to Susan, I said, it's great that this is a party, but the price of the ticket should not be your life. And so that was the background that was going on behind the scenes around that time.
Let me just say this, that Susan Taylor was a thinker beyond her time. She literally heard me speak for 5 minutes. I was receiving an award and she was the keynote speaker, and men had been hitting on me all night. I was looking fabulous in my Lily Rubens sequins dress, and men were passing me numbers sitting next to women. And when I stood up to receive my award, I said, you know what, Black folks, we are in absolute total denial. I said, men have been hitting on me all night. Not only do I have HIV, but I have full-blown AIDS. And then me and my wiki-walkie self said, and thank you for the award. And as I whisked off the stage, Miss Taylor grabbed my hand and said, can I do a story on you? And 2 weeks later, she called. But the politics that took place at Essence was beyond. Ed Lewis told me himself that he did not want this cover to go forward. There was this huge debate. First of all, they were putting a non-celebrity on the cover of the magazine, which hadn't ever happened. You either had to be a celebrity or a supermodel to be on the cover of Essence. And then, so this no-name woman, and then I had AIDS, and the staff internally fought on both sides on whether or not they should actually do this. And Ed Lewis said to me, he looked me in the face and said, I didn't want to do it, but we sold more Essence magazines in the history of the December. So for him, it was a profitable angle. And even in his memoir, he talks not about how remarkable it was that they addressed this issue that was impacting the Black community, but that they were just kind of lumped it into cutting edge kind of commentary, news commentary. And, it's just really unfortunate that, Phill, Hadia, we were out there doing the work, and we had to pull tooth and nail to get others to come along with us in the African American community.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, culture change is not easy, and every single one of your stories underscores that. One of my very favorite learning theorists, when I decided to geek out a little bit, is Peter Senge, the author of the book The Fifth Discipline. And when Peter writes about transformation, he says transformation happens when we're willing to begin to re-examine some of our underlying assumptions. And I think our next guest, Hydeia, is a shining example of that, a shining example of what it means to challenge people's underlying assumptions. Hydeia, as I mentioned earlier, at the age of 3, you began living with AIDS starting at the age of 3, and you have become a distinct voice in the movement. I want to ask you a similar question what I asked Phill earlier. This moment that we find ourselves in the United States and the rest of the world, with folks asking questions that might sound eerily similar to questions that so many of you heard way back in the early days. What's your status? Have you been tested? Are you okay? Wink, wink, dot, dot, dot. Can you compare and contrast sort of, what it was like growing up, with AIDS and having to navigate and confront some of the stigma that you had to endure with some of the stigma and some of the attitudes that you've picked up on related to COVID?
What's funny is I was just telling my best friend, someone was coughing, and they said, "Oh, don't worry, I don't got that stuff right there." And I said, "Girl, you remember when it used to be an HIV they used to make sure they didn't have, and now it's COVID." So I think the parallels are very similar. For me, the stigma, growing up, my stigma was really being accepted, making sure that I had the same rights, the same opportunity as everyone else. And that's what we really fought for. Making sure we had education for young people, making sure they were informed. We harp on the young people that they're not doing this and they're not doing that, and their numbers are going high. So we know at COVID, we had a time where HIV was really high around young people. And we had young people who had stepped up to the plate to kind of eradicate and make sure, hey, we're young people, we need a voice. And I see now we have the COVID numbers are high amongst young people. So anything I can say about young people is make sure that you guys stay safe, stay informed, and just at all maximum, just make sure you don't get COVID. For me, we had to fight for the right to go to school. Now we kind of have people who don't want to go to school because we have social distancing. So the parallels are very weird sometimes in a sense, but I really hope and pray we get a grip on COVID very soon.
Thank you for that. And now I want to bring in, Bert Champagne, who has an incredible record of bringing people together in community. I want to transition to the next segment of our conversation, which is really around the healing power of community. And anybody that's ever been to an AIDS walk, and especially in places like New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles, it is definitely a day where you don't feel alone. And the amount of sharing and the remembrance of loved ones who passed on is incredible. Can you talk a little bit about how do you even design an opportunity for people to come together in community at that scale, year after year after year, as somebody that I'm sure has lost folks, friends and loved ones over the years to HIV/AIDS. How do you do it year in and year out? And what wisdom can you offer all of us who are enduring the loss of so much over the course of this past year? How can we pull ourselves through tapping into the tremendous power of community?
Well, the very first AIDS walk was in 1985 here in Los Angeles. Then it was 1986, it was in New York, and then 1987 in San Francisco. So those were the three biggest places that it was hitting at that moment. What people don't realize is at the very first AIDS walk, it wasn't the gay community that came out because the gay community could not take care of each other. It was the mothers of the people dying and lesbian women. And I know we always talk about the gays and the lesbians always being in a fight, But if it wasn't for our lesbian sisters that were there for us, myself, I started volunteering with APLA when I found out I was HIV positive. I found out I was HIV positive when I was 25 years old. A few weeks ago, I celebrated my 59th birthday. Next year, I'll join the group of 60s. So, knock on wood. I used to work in the food pantry because my background was working in a grocery store. So I worked in the food pantry, and one day I was standing there stocking the shelves, and people were looking at me, and I thought I was doing something wrong. And Phill will remember this way back in the day. We were in this giant warehouse, and they were looking to learn from me. And so that's how we help each other. We learn. So then I was in volunteering, and they said they needed people to help with the AIDS walk. And so we would call people, and when we would call, we couldn't say who we were because of the stigma. And we couldn't say we're calling from AIDS Walk. We would say we're calling from a fundraising event. Then I went to my very first AIDS Walk at Paramount Studios. It was absolutely amazing. All of these people coming together. And after about a year, I said, I want to do this. Next year will be my 30th year working at AIDS Walk. I've got many, many years helping with Project Angel Food. And we bring these people together because, one, people do it because they remember what happened. If you remember back in the day, they used to say, "Are you gay?" And what that meant was, "Got AIDS yet?" Remember that, Phill? Remember that, everyone? That was like, oh, ha, ha, ha. That's what gay means, got AIDS yet? And they made a big deal about it. And then you got to remember, the people in power weren't talking about AIDS then. Mm-hmm. And just in this latest administration, they're rolling back some of the enormous work that people have done on behalf of people with HIV and AIDS. They were trying to take the Ryan White money. And what's different between this and COVID-19? And it may sound horrible to say, people actually care about the people that have COVID-19. They didn't care about the people that had HIV and AIDS. That was a gay disease. That was their problem. COVID-19 is everyone's problem. And now we're coming up on almost 250,000 people are dead now. Yeah. It's horrible. It's horrible. But, I've lost many, many, many friends to AIDS. And so if I can get a group together to come out and do the AIDS walk, I'm just one of those many people that do it. And you have hundreds and thousands of people that come out. At the most, you had 40,000 people doing AIDS Walk New York. You had 30,000 people doing AIDS Walk Los Angeles, 25,000 people, 30,000 people doing AIDS Walks, San Francisco. So in their mind, it's those people are living because maybe their great uncle died of AIDS. And so they want to do something about it. And that's why we continue to have AIDS Walk, because people remember, they care. And AIDS isn't over yet. And I don't want people to think that people aren't still getting AIDS. We have some great drugs out there, but guess what? Not everybody follows protocol. Look what's happening with the mask. But I'm going to not let that go.
Thank you for that, Bert. And speaking of remembrance and speaking of the healing power of community, I would be remiss if I didn't ask Sheryl to weigh in, because, DIVAS has been putting on an incredible show for decades. And anybody that has ever had the opportunity to attend a DIVAS Simply Singing event, it is nothing short of amazing. You feel a tremendous sense of community from the moment you walk through the doors of the Wilshire E-Bell or wherever it is, till the last act. Can you share a little bit, Sheryl, about why you decided to channel your activism and channel your talent and tap into your community to create an even greater sense of community and awareness, and why you've been doing this for now 30 years. 30 years. What a commitment.
When I think about that, I always go right back to love. I mean, love has so many different variations and iterations. And it's like, I'm not telling anybody's secret or what you don't know, but, If you look at everybody on this panel today, Phill told you, his partner at that time said, hey, I don't feel well. Phill realized he didn't feel well. There was love there. Bert's partner and they were wild crazy in love. He didn't feel well and he lost his life real quick. And then there was Bert. There was love there. When I think about Rae, when she tells you she was the it chick, as pretty as she might look to you now, you had to see Rae in the day. Like off the chart, beautiful woman. Everybody loved her. Everybody loved Rae. And all those men, they flocked to Rae. As much as there might have been sexual attraction, there was love in how she contracted the disease. And with Hydeia being born this way, somebody loved her enough to come and get her from where she was so that she could be with us. And all of these people, I think about love because they are all still here. They are all still living, moving forward, and thriving. And that to me is amazing because when I first started, it was a death sentence. And my friends were dropping dead, one right after the other, and nobody cared. And just like my panelists, they were good people, they were kind people, they were talented people. Somebody loved them. I loved them. And people wanted to act like they did not matter. And for lack of better words, it pissed me off. And it just built a fire in me. And I said, I'm always going to remember what they did for me. So for me, Divas has never been transactional. It has always been intentional with love. And I know that it matters because like you said, Nii-Quartelai, people always say to me, whoa, I felt something that evening. And what they feel is love. They feel the fact that no matter who and how or what we are a family. And I love the people that had been in my family and lost their lives under stigma and shame. So for 30 years, there have been years, I don't know how Divas was going to happen. There've been years I thought to myself, I don't have it. I don't have the money for it. Okay, there was some Moesha years. I had the money in the Moesha years. I could do it myself. It didn't matter. I just used my own money. But then there was some other years I didn't have it. No. It wasn't coming to me. And over the years, if I could tell you the number of people who felt good about telling me how stupid I was for doing this, how stupid I was for still talking about those people, and how this was not going to help my career because nobody cares. But I have to tell you, I care. I still care. I still remember. And when I look at my children now, and I see how my children are growing with a loving spirit for others, and how accepting they are of people, period, I say, that's why I still do it. When I look at Rae, and it's effing Friday, that's Rae. But Rae is still here doing her thing. When I look at Hydeia, still living, growing up, finding herself, turning into a woman, after people saying all the time, that baby's gonna die. Well, the fact is we're all gonna die. When I look at doggone Bert, who is able to smile now, who is able to say who he is now out loud and lead people, that's why we do this. When I look at Phill Wilson, Phill Wilson is a good-looking man, baby. Look at Phill Wilson back in the day. I'd have married him. I'd have married him. Honey, let me tell you. Phill and how he laid his life down for everybody else. Man, that's love. That's why I still do it. So every year, and this year will be virtual, and sometimes years lead you to this place. And this discussion that we're having, it may look like it's just us right here, right now, but the whole world is going to see this. There are still places in the world where they do not talk about HIV, much less AIDS. There are still places in the world, and I know of one, where they have to put their clinic behind a garage to hide it so nobody sees what they're really doing, which is giving people HIV tests and medication. So this, maybe the 30 years has been to bring us to this moment, to bring the conversation to the world. So in the beginning, I was young. Now I am older, and I am still knowing that love is love is love, and it must be shared no matter how difficult it is.
Let me say something about community that I think is
I'm going to give you an opportunity. We're running a little short on time, and so I just want to set up just sort of our final segment, which is about the next frontier. And this is going to be the lightning round for everyone. So I want everybody to weigh in. Rae, we're going to start with you to share a little bit about what's the next frontier in the fight. What does that look like? What does that include? As we sit here today, we know that here in the United States, that there is a new administration that is imminent. AARP, and we also say AARP is a nonpartisan organization, so we want to keep these remarks are nonpartisan. But there is change afoot in our nation, change afoot in the world, and change creates opportunity on the horizon. And so I want each of you to very briefly share, what do you see as part of the next frontier in the fight to end HIV/AIDS? How are you channeling your activism these days? And how can folks join the movement from your perch? Rae, you want to start us off?
Okay. I just want to say this real quick before I get to there. The thing about community, and that is important for us to talk about in terms of our survival, we had so much community within the HIV community. And I think that is really, really important. We were living under so much stigma and so much shame that, for example, in Chicago, the only place that you could get a hug or, share ideas or talk about your medication was actually at the AIDS clinic. Mm-hmm. And I think that was important for a lot of our survivals to have those hugs and that safe place to really talk about HIV, which brings me to the landscape of where we are today. I still don't believe that the attitudes around HIV/AIDS has advanced with the medical technology. We've gotten to a place now where a person who has an undetectable viral load cannot transmit HIV. Some pharmaceutical companies have a pill a day, but we still don't have a vaccine. That's one. But we still have this fight because people are living with HIV still in isolation. especially in areas of the South where the majority of the people who are infected with HIV are African American. We still have a rise of young Black gay men with HIV. And so we still have a lot of work to do around stigma and shame around this disease so that we can begin to see it as a medical issue and not as so much as a social issue. And I think that's where we need to shift with the emphasis. I think we have to get to that place of no more stigma so that people can get treatment, people can use condoms. And I just think that that's where we're at. For me, it's about connecting all of the dots. In my own personal life, an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse, how all of that led to my HIV status. And so for me, I'm connecting the dots of my life outside of HIV to bring it home to HIV so that we can begin to look at women and behavior and how to keep ourselves safe and free in a world where we're not valued.
Thank you for that. Hydeia, what do you next frontier?
Well, having conversations like this are important. So I want to say thank you to everyone who has participated in showing our faces and saying, you know, we are living with HIV or whether it's AIDS. I believe it can be a movement. This World AIDS Day, with so much social activity and so much social activism taking part, we all can join forces and talk about HIV and let people know that we are living and breathing. The doctor said I wouldn't live past the age of 5. I just turned 35. So once we go and say and show our lives and how fulfilled we are, I believe we can make a movement on COVID-19. So that is my hope and what I hope we can do. Just keep living and showing an example of how to be a productive member in society and how we didn't have hope. We didn't have love back in the day, but we show all of this now. We can beat COVID-19, and I believe it. And there's something I always say, if Magic Johnson made it, anyone can make it. So, yes, we can do it.
Thank you, Hydeia. Thank you for that. Bert, I want to go to you. I mean, you know, if AIDS Walk is anything like AARP, you know, we're not doing any in-person events for the foreseeable future. And so as an alternative this year, there's so many people that have channeled their activism year in and year out, you know, attending, you know, AIDS Walk. Yeah. How can folks channel their activism a little bit differently, but still supporting the cause? And also, what do you see on the next frontier? Well,
Currently, I see for our next frontier that we are going to be going virtual for a little while longer because I don't think anybody can have, you know, 20,000 people, 10,000 people gathered together because, well, we don't have that much space, free space. I think what we also need to do is we need to check on our 50 plus people with HIV, because not only do they have to worry about COVID, but there's other things that are happening to people over 50 with HIV. They have diabetes, they have bone density tests that are coming back showing that their bones aren't as strong, you know, brittle bones. So there's all kinds of other things that are going on with our seniors, such as me. Anyone over 50 and can join AARP. I think we need to check on them, but still keep our eye on all of these organizations that still need the funding. So if we continue to raise money at a virtual event, I mean, we had an amazing virtual event for New York and San Francisco. It was people talking, you know, we had great sponsors, and we're going to have to do it again for this year. But I also think that we need to, as a community, remember that if we don't support these organizations, services aren't going to be provided. So I think as a whole, let's find out when your next AIDS walk is. It doesn't have to be New York. It doesn't have to be San Francisco. It could be Chicago. It could be any of these other small cities. You know, Des Moines, Iowa may have an AIDS walk. I'm not sure. But I know there's a lot of organizations out there that still need our help. And, you know, reach out to your seniors. We have 1 pill a day that people take to help prevent HIV. We're looking at a vaccine for COVID. Once we get the vaccine for COVID, can we start working on HIV, cancer, lupus, all of these other diseases? If we can do this much this quick for COVID, HIV is almost 40 years old. If we would have put the emphasis on that as we're doing on COVID, we would all be sitting here and all of our friends would be joining us. So let's see what we can do, and take care of each other, mainly take care of each other.
Thank you for that, Bert. And Phill, you know, you've done so much. I mean, the Black AIDS Institute, you know, is really one of the crown jewels of our movements, plural. And there was a lot that went into developing that institute over many years. I'm sure there were days and years where you weren't sure, you know, if it might be around for a next frontier, but it is. And so I want to ask you, what's the next frontier in the fight against HIV/AIDS? You know, what does that look like, and what gives you hope or concern as we prepare to change administrations and attempt to seize the day?
Well, I'll start with, you know, the last thing that you asked about hope or concern. You know, I am a 64-year-old Black gay man living with AIDS in America. I lead with hope. You know, there is no currency for me in being pessimistic. I'm alive today because there's hope there. And so that's where I always am. And it's a necessary component of my survival. Now, when I think about the next frontier, I think about the past is the present, and the present is the future. You know, Martin Luther King said that the moral arc is long, but it bends towards justice. And so what have we learned from the AIDS epidemic, and what are we learning from COVID-19? And that it is about justice. You know, HIV and AIDS happened because there was a lack of compassion, as Sheryl says, a lack of love, and our victories were rooted in justice. Our victory around COVID-19 will be rooted in justice. Now, and as we embrace, you know, moving towards, in the United States, a more perfect union, globally, a more just place where justice is not just about just us, Justus, but it's truly about, you know, the moral arc of justice, we will prevail. And finally, that we should never, ever, ever, ever forget that we have a role to play and a responsibility. Audre Lorde said, when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcome. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it's better to speak remembering we were never meant to survive, because it is only through speaking and working and fighting and loving that we live. And so as I think about the next frontier, it is about moving aggressively forward towards justice.
Thank you for that, Phill.
That's right.
Sheryl, you want to offer us a final word?
You know what? He said justice. People need to get involved. People need to carry on and know. Don't just start voting now and forget about it. Keep on voting. Wear your mask. Get used to the fact that masks and condoms have actually been proven to be barriers towards your better health. People couldn't get used to condoms back in the day. They can't get used to masks now. The future, if you're going to be into it, realize that you must protect yourself as you would protect others. DIVAS Simply Singing, the D.I.V.A Foundation, has never been transactional. It has always been intentional about bringing you the proper information, keeping you aware, letting you know that you are not outside of the fight. No matter how you feel, you are in the fight. And with that, you must be able to fight for yourself. So the future, it's coming. And I need Black people, people of color, to be in it. So please start taking care of yourself now. Start valuing yourself now, because your health is your greatest wealth. And too many of us do not value it until it's gone. So we remain divinely inspired, victoriously alive at the D.I.V.A Foundation. And I cannot thank you enough, Dr. Nii-Quartelai and everybody at AARP, for bringing us to this moment with you as we grow wiser, as we grow older, as we continue to grow, period.
And Sheryl, as the Senior Advisor and National LGBTQ Liaison for AARP, it really gives me great joy to be able to say thank you on behalf of AARP, on behalf of our 38 million members across the country, of which we estimate about 900,000 of our members self-identify as LGBTQ. It's not lost on me that there are generations of folks that died, perhaps never having the opportunity to join AARP and be in community with folks over the age of 50. And so to Phill Wilson, to Rae Lewis-Thornton, to Hydeia Broadbent, Bert Champagne, and the Sheryl Ralph, please accept our heartfelt thanks on this World AIDS Day.
Yeah! Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and thank you everybody at AARP. And in supporting us, AARP, they asked for a wonderful performer. And I want you all to tune in on Saturday, December 5th, to watch the 30th annual D.I.V.A Simply Singing on KTLA or streamed live on the D.I.V.A Simply Singing Facebook page. But here, because I love you so much, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at the AARP performance.
You the one who tried to hurt me with the fire? Did you think I'd crumble? Did you think I'd lay down and die? I was
Go. Miss Gloria Taylor, she says, I will survive. But she's not just surviving, she is thriving through the years as she carries on. So join us. Tomorrow, we'll have another panel for you to enjoy like you enjoyed this one, and every day leading up to December 6th. That's the day after the 5th, right? Because we're taking up this whole week. Anyway, I'm Sheryl Ralph. World AIDS Day created to bring us all together in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Mwah! Thank you, AARP.
It's a show like no other. The 30th annual D.I.V.A Simply Singing Concert and Telethon, presented by Sheryl Ralph and the D.I.V.A Foundation. A star-studded event raising awareness for HIV/AIDS. Performances by Jennifer Lewis, Layla Hathaway, Anthony Hamilton, and more. Benefiting Project Angel Food and Better Brothers LA. D.I.V.A Simply Singing, powered by Gilead. Saturday at 7 on KTLA 5, LA's very own.